Okay, here we go with the biology of Kundalini. We are on the second day of reading. Let's see if I can get that right. So we're in the introduction, so I'm just going to begin. Throughout this book, the term Kundalini Awakening is used interchangeably with metamorphosis, spiritual alchemy, spiritual acceleration, the inner marriage, the sacred marriage, the passion, and even the great bliss. The energy of Kundalini could be variously called prana, chi, mana, starfire. Also around the world is known as ka, ichor, anua, sila, manatuak, oladumar, ki, the Tao, chi, ether, archaeus, etheric energy, vital life essence, vital energy, life force, and quintessence. Baron Karl von Reichenbach called it the odic force, or ode. Paracelsus, archaeus. William Reich, orgon. Ken Wilber, spiritual eros. Henry Bergson called it élan vital. Teilhard de Chardin, I don't know if I'm saying these right, radial energy, and Freud called it the libido. It's also synonymous with Sheldrake's morphogenic fields. Whether it be from a spontaneous awakening, the result of spiritual practice, also called sadhana in Sanskrit, or through shaktipat from a guru, which is a spiritual transmission, metamorphosis tends to be such an overwhelmingly cataclysmic process that the more knowledge and tools for the road we have, the better. Which is why I'm doing this reading. Transformation is not comfortable, but it can be paced. To surrender to our own evolution is to strengthen us to endure the all-consuming flame of spirit. My aim in writing this book and doing this study, my aim in studying with you, is to help you and others in facilitating their own chemistry through a sustained awakening, rather than have it go wildly up and down in raw reactivity, which is what it would do by itself, which is why I coach. For in my experience, she writes, after a full-on 6-month Kundalini peak, it takes about 5 years to recover. I can attest to that. But the more we know about the neurological activity of Kundalini, the higher the potential spiritual gains and the faster the recovery, which is my main purpose also. One can see in each of us going through this phenomena that it is transpersonal, archetypal, and anthropomorphic. Though in its insidious omnipresence, it is intensely personal and specific, especially crafted to our own unique needs and conditions. For it is a consummate, perfect storm of the self. Kundalini works with whatever we've built ourselves to be. So we just start with wherever we are, and that's where this life force starts with us. Whatever our uncrustations and blocks, the fire in perfect equanimity uses everything good and bad to fuel the flame of consciousness. And that is the art of the Great Mother, the alchemy of the Shekinah. You can look at Kundalini through quantum, subatomic, atomic, molecular, cellular, organ, organism, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, mystical, mythic, sociological, and species evolutionary lenses, for it encompasses all of these. All of these, it's in all of it. Just because our reality has a material component, however, is not to dismiss the sublime beauty and significance of our subjective experience of the divine. So just because we have this, very material part, that's not to negate the spiritual part, which is the life force energy part that animates everything, right? Kundalini is very specific and unique chemistry that uses every facet of your biology and affects the entire being. So it uses the existing biology, okay? To me, to this author, Kundalini is a friend, a lover, a guide, a teacher, a taskmaster, a spirit, and the presence of the Holy Ghost. As I become familiar with Kundalini, I notice that any genuine insight or creative urge simultaneous arises on a flux of Kundalini. So that's what brings in the creative energy, in the insight. And you can begin to notice what this feels like too, when you get an insight or an inspiration. Thus, I really have to say that Kundalini is none other than spirit itself, manifesting on every level. In fact, any meaningful psychic, relational, mental, or spiritual event is simultaneous with a flux of Kundalini. Every single one. So as you realize, we're not using an experience about something that you've never had. You've had it. It's just in being able to name a thing that there's power, right? The fire of transmutation feels like desire. It feels like passion, the ultimate passion. So we have to distinguish between life-destructive desires that reduces the fire of transmutation and the great passion itself. The paradoxes involved with Kundalini abound. I could say that again. The paradoxes that are involved with Kundalini, they abound. Many paradoxes. The whole thing is paradoxical, actually. The more we do to open ourselves up, the hotter the flame becomes. But if we try to stem the flame, then we regress and damage ourselves. It is really a case of how much bliss we can stand and how fast we can process our emerging self, or how fast we can help someone else process their emerging self, which is largely determined by how fast and how thoroughly we can unload our baggage and past self, which is what I do in my coaching. That is how I help people, is to help them through emotion code, which is helping to clear past baggage, through ancestral healing work, past life work. Also, Yoga Nidra does a fantastic job of unloading in the subconscious mind. And then there is integration work too, which is part of the process too. There's both the unloading and the integration that are necessary. The increasing sense of being at home and being alive makes metamorphosis seem inevitable. As the awakening speeds our incarnation, a feeling of objective conscious, which is also called baraka, and gratitude arise as a powerful urge to go with the force of evolution. For the spiritual drive of Eros is our own deepest source and condition of being that we share with all of life. If we do not listen and surrender to this feeling of right will, we will resort to sense gratification and self-destruction in an effort to avoid ourself and to abdicate our lives. Kundalini awakening can leave us totally incapacitated at times, or permanently damaged as far as our adaptability to this culture. Even Muktananda complained that he feared he would not be able to look at himself after he had experienced samadhi a couple of times, a high state of bliss. The Guru Ashram system is great in this way, in that it ensures those that are completely lost to Kundalini will be looked after. We don't really have those in the West, but in the East they abound. So she says, not so in Western society, however. The initiate is more likely to be misunderstood, taken advantage of, or locked up. Thus, the more we know about the Kundalini process, the better adapted we can be to the evolutionary force while still surviving in the Western way of life. This is really important. So the more we know, the more we can adapt, and then we can be prepared. while we're going through this process, and we can help those around us, and we can not think our family members or friends are something other than they are. Metamorphosis must surely be the most amazing and misunderstood phenomena on Earth. Definitely. My main intent while writing this book, says Jana Dixon, was to dispel misinformation, fear, resistance, and superstition with regard to this most mysterious of all life processes. That is also my intention. So many things have to be right for a successful Kundalini awakening. Going it alone is hard. Being insulated and attacked by spiritual Nazis, formalists, for expressing one's experience makes it so much harder. The experience of persecution is a common one, unfortunately, and the individual learns to not take it personally. And this too becomes part of the courageous growth of the self while we live in a society that is largely ignorant and fearful of this metamorphosis process. Compassion and joy gets you safely through any social ignorance. Compassion and joy. The path of fire compared to the stoic path of many traditions might seem unruly and unsure. But the heart can understand Kundalini better than the mind can. The heart just knows. Her work, my work, is entirely bent on helping to alleviate the ignorance on this matter and to reduce the compounded suffering humanity has undergone in the name of evolution. So much suffering. If one already is in total upheaval with Kundalini, it's just not advantageous to have one's community responding in devalidation. So not seeing you, you're already freaking out like, who is this person that's emerging? What's happening to me? Am I crazy? And then to have the community around you say that too, whew. The initiate has to be twice as strong, both to endure the fire itself and to endure the social backlash. So it's important for us as community members to understand this, even if you aren't going through it yet or you don't know what this is, to be familiarized. It's, again, as I've said in other videos, it is like a second maturation, a second puberty. So pretend there's really not very many people or anyone that's gone through puberty and all the kids are having to support each other, telling them, yeah, while you start going through that, it's fine. I've heard it's great. I met one guy once that grew up and he had chest hair like that and he grew a mustache. No, really, it's fine. You're not sick. But everyone else is like, this is weird. Like, why is your chest big now? And what's going on? You know, like if we didn't know what was going to happen to the physical body and there wasn't anyone really showing us, it would seem pretty freaking scary. You would really think something was wrong with you. Think about it. I know it seems weird because we grew up knowing that's what was going to happen, but this is the same sort of thing. In life, we get remarkable opportunities, but without knowledge, strength, and determination, we can make a mess of the greatest gifts nature offers us, such as sex, youth, brains, talent, and Kundalini awakenings. With the Kundalini awakening, we are given the possibility of unwinding the body-mind that has largely been conditioned by others in order for it to be remade by a will that is larger than our own and for larger than the social will. Now, this is where it gets tricky for friends and family members. If they see someone going through this and you think, oh my gosh, they've lost their mind or they're crazy or they're, acting up or they need medication, because that's all you know. And that's fine because that's all you've been taught. And I have no judgment on that except for that an education is needed because it's already difficult for the aspirant. Sometimes the only way to protect one's inner fear about what's happening is to make the ego very big, because the ego is trying to be crushed by this Kundalini awakening and basically tell you there isn't a you anymore, that the only you there is the divine's will for you. And that if you're not ready for that or you want to surrender to that, the ego is basic job is to keep you alive, is to maintain a sense of identity, right? That's the job of the ego. That's the reptilian mind. It's survival based. So even awakening feels like an attack on the ego self. I believe this can be the cause of even autoimmune symptoms, because this is an attack of the self by the body. So even the symptoms of awakening can make the body, if the mind isn't right about it, think something's wrong, because that's all you know. That's the only feedback loops that you have. Those are the only synapses available in your brain, right? If you don't have another option to, if the answer is like, here's the question, and then the answer is A or B, and there's no C or D, then you think the only options are A and B, right? If you don't know another option and you don't even think one exists, you're never given C or D, then you're going to think A and B is all there is, unless you're really like critical thinker and you think bigger than the question, which not everyone's taught to do. And only if you've had like an experience might you bring up that possibility in your mind. But if you don't have self-trust, which is a big one, we're not really taught to trust our instincts in this culture, then you can also discount even something that you're like, well, that could be a possibility, but actually really it's not. And a lot of those programs come from our ancestors. That's the way our parents taught us, and their parents taught them to think, and the school system taught them to think, and the medical system and the educational system are all like lined up, backing up a certain way of thinking about the body and the mind and the possibility and even how old we can be. And what, when things happen to the body, what that feels like and what that must be. Like it's like the answer is already given. And if you say something else, you're going to get it wrong. So this is Kundalini is asking us to surrender that self. And some people are anxious to. They don't like those answers anyway. They're like, yeah, I want a different answer. And thank goodness for those people, because they have led the way for the opening of, there being another option, right, for the collective. So I want to keep these videos around 20-25 minutes each, and this is almost the end of this chapter. So it says, Kundalini takes us on a cosmic adventure to the essential core of consciousness in life. I wonder how illumined life would be if all stops were pulled out and we could handle the full charge of what could only be called extreme lifestyle. Like fully charged with life force. What would that look like, is what she's saying. Metamorphosis is perhaps the most complicated thing humans can investigate. Scientific investigation doesn't destroy the mystery. It is just one of the languages we use to describe it. In fact, scientific understanding increases the depth and span of the mystery, taking it actually to new heights. There is nothing romantic about being in the depths of total upheaval and not knowing what the heck is going on at a cellular and a chemical level. Beyond the veil of material reality, inconceivable mystery is at play, working tirelessly for the greater good. All biological processes from the beginning of life go toward creating this awesome chemistry change. A huge jump to the next level beyond normal human functions. Think of that. From your very first biological moment of creation, when the sperm and the egg came together, everything is propelling you toward this awakening. And even before that, it says transmutation didn't accidentally just happen. It's the ultimate outcome of all of life. In all of its trillions and trillions of atomic and molecular transactions over the last 4 billion years is an inevitable chain of events autopoetically undertaken by a hylozoic universe. I don't even know what that word hylozoic means. So if you know, maybe you can put it in the comments. To ultimately lead up to the transmuting body, human body mind. We, my brothers and sisters, we are the universe becoming aware of itself. We are the universe becoming aware that we are this alchemical chemistry. We are, she says, I can't even express how awesome that is, that this alchemical chemistry is a priori attractor. It is the Kundalini passion, the muse itself that is driving me to reveal itself. Kundalini and spiritual evolution is the tangible manifestation of the great drive toward divinity that every atom of the universe has secretly been engaged in from the very beginning. The very beginning. The drive toward remembering itself as divine. Since it's completely natural, like childbearing or falling in love. My mind just boggles that the zenith chemistry and its unity with the entire chain of being. Transmutation as a priori evolutionary drive. This was the goal all along. If not, then how could the ultimate chemistry just happen in everyday classical biology? Surely this nexus must have been the carrot drawing life through its infinite choices. The clockwork precision and the systems of the body, it is a form of ultimate chemistry, which life has been working on and working towards for eons. Either it will drive us mad, or we will be saved from ourselves. The way we have built our bodies in the West, though, with dough bodies of starch and sugar and stimulants, means we don't have the mineral base, the energy reserves, the protein strength, and the cellular integrity to withstand intense Kundalini. We just don't have it. With feeble structural integrity, instead of steady, sustained evolution, we tend to blow up like a ton of dynamite, honestly. Since increasingly more people will be exposed to Kundalini through Eastern practices and the stress of increased survival pressures definitely happening now, it means we will have an increased number of people popping in bodies and lives that could be severely damaged by the full evolution of their consciousness, okay? Increasing numbers of people just awakening. And that's why I'm putting this video out. That's why I'm doing this. Because maybe you watching are going through this. Eastern teachers and traditions cannot help us in the West with this problem, for our biophysical, mental, and social makeup is quite different to what that historically has been the case in the East. It's different. The medical industry, in its present form, it can't help us either with this. They attempt to suppress the symptoms with antidepressants, anticonvulsants, anti-seizure medication, diuretics, antihistamines, high blood pressure drugs, and undoubtedly they will invent a new smorgasbord of highly destructive drugs to cure us of a spiritual awakening. Humanity is going to be at a loss with how to deal with this growing problem of people awakening in bodies and socioeconomic conditions that do not serve the awakening process. If we do not awaken to the reality of the situation as a society, then many of the initiates will invariably crash and burn, and I am seeing this, becoming a burden to themselves and others. I feel like I haven't fully fulfilled my role, and that's why I feel urgent to share this in this way, because I'm seeing this already happen, even with people I'm trying to help, but not enough people are educated. You know, if it's just me and the client, but their families aren't fully educated, then that's a problem. They would have been lifted up by a wave of evolution only to crash on the beach and be ground into sand. Then instead of initiates forming the leading edge of the developmental wave, we will find them living on the streets as human refuse to an enlightenment experiment gone terribly wrong. In this way, the evolutionary wave of humanity could be aborted due to lack of understanding. Then the only means of growth left to us is the mental conventional growth, and this is just not adequate to save us from ourselves. We won't make it like that. Without spiritual evolution, we are doomed as a species. honest to God. Without spiritual evolution, we are doomed as a species. We have too much life in us, too much longing, too much depth to settle for very long for what's just right here. All healing is spiritual healing. And just as healing is innate to the organism, so is enlightenment also innate. The human body is genetically engineered to become enlightened. However, this potential mostly remains latent, a sleeping giant. However, the more people that pop and wake up, the greater the morphogenic propensity for increasing numbers of people to pop through resonance, which is happening now. But to cope with this contagion of awakening, that is coupling, like I said yesterday, the dark comes first and then the light. So this coupling of contagions, but this is a contagion of awakening, we are going to have to collectively learn to consciously incarnate through a positive approach to Kundalini Awakenings, including preparation, seeing a lot of that in different ways, protection, practices, and higher purpose. Much of what we're suffering from these days is a combination of nature deprivation. If that's not you, how about stress overload? How about mineral nutrient depletion? How about enzyme insufficiency? Heavy metal poisoning? EMF pollution? Parasite infestation? Magnetic deficiency syndrome? A Kundalini awakening will quicken and reveal all of these causes and conditions. It'll just bring it right out to the surface, maybe even all of them at once. Thus, a successful awakening entails a full spectrum lifestyle change, full spectrum, which addresses all of these types of imbalances, and we do this in coaching. If we fully prepare and protect the body from radiation, oxidation, glycylation, toxicity, catabolysis, and inflammation associated with Kundalini, then we can sustain a perpetual awakening without depression, so that can happen, and without burnout or exhaustion phases, because these ain't fun, guys. And I'm still learning to fully cope with my process, but as I learn, I try to share that too. And so transform civilization from within ourselves. So that's the end of that beginning. Tomorrow we're going to read about her story a little bit and how her Kundalini awakened. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of mine and share a little bit from that time. So I hope you'll join me again as we read from Jana Dixon's Biology of Kundalini, Exploring the Fire of Life. This is so important. Thank you for listening, for liking, and for sharing with somebody that you know could benefit from listening to this. And you remember, you can get on lulu.com and find the book for free to look at, read, cross-reference words, find places, or you can just buy the book. It's an amazing resource, 500 and something pages. We're just going to read some of this together. All right, much love.